Hello, family. Our movie begins with Edward Lewis, a wealthy businessman from New York. He hangs up the phone with his girlfriend, Jessica, and knows she's furious because he's not paying attention to her. Being the gentleman that he is, he wants to make apologies to his girlfriend. As a result, he takes a friend's sports car and drives to her house. The scene shifts to Vivian, a call girl. She sneaks out of her flat, careful not to be discovered by her landlord. Vivian is looking for a drunk roommate that has spent their entire rent money on drugs. Kit and Vivian set out to find some action with wealthy men. Around the same time, Edward winds up on Hollywood Boulevard in the city's red light district by accident. He comes to a halt on the sidewalk near the girls, unsure how to get to his girlfriend's house. The girls rush up to him, and Vivian tries to recover their rent money. Viv successfully persuades Edward to let her accompany him and show him the way. When Vivian watches Edward struggle to drive his friend's manual sports car, she requests that he swap and she takes the wheel. Given his wealth, Vivian informs Edward that her hourly charge is $100. Edward responds that she is quite stiff. Then Vivian leans over and touches his banana, which makes Edward so happy that he forgets about his girlfriend. The two visit the Waverly Wilshire Hotel, and Vivian is captivated by the hotel's grandeur and magnificence. Vivian is rushing through things inside Edward's apartment, but Edward wants to get to know her better first. He realizes that Vivian isn't interested in small talk and prefers to get right to work, so he impulsively hires her for the whole night, accepting her increased pay of $300 per hour. Despite some awkwardness at first, Edward finds her charming and gets along well with her. He watches her as she drinks champagne, eats strawberries, and watches a movie. Finally, they get in between the sheets and later fall asleep. Edward finds that Vivian's true hair is truly red and he admires her beauty while she sleeps in the morning. And Vivian continue to converse, and Edward orders dishes on the breakfast menu for Vivian to taste. With all of the luxury surrounding her, Vivian feels like she's in heaven. Vivian's effervescent personality piques Edward's interest, and he provides her with $3,000 and new clothes for the whole week. Vivian enthusiastically agrees to spend the week with him. She then chooses to spend her newfound wealth by going on a shopping spree when she enters a high-expensive clothing boutique. However, things do not go as planned. She is bullied by saleswomen who refuse to sell her anything because she is not the type of person they generally cater to. Humiliated, when Vivian returns to the hotel to ask for assistance, she discovers that she has misplaced her keys to Edward's room. The hotel personnel reject her because she cannot give confirmation that she has reserved a room. When Vivian breaks into tears, the hotel manager, Barney, is gracious and understanding. The manager makes some phone calls and assists her. She then goes out again and has a nice time looking for a good dress to wear to Edward's dinner. She requests that Barney teach her proper dining etiquette so that she does not embarrass Edward in front of his clients. At this point, Vivian's beautiful attractiveness impresses Edward. What's more unexpected is that he invites her to a business dinner with potential clients, oblivious to the possibility that she will disgrace him by doing something idiotic. The business meeting does not go well since Edward's clients are underwhelmed by his desire to buy and sell their company. Edward is moved by Vivian's change and opens out to her about his personal and professional life. He informs her that he buys and dismantles failing businesses, then sells the assets for a profit. Their occupations are, after all, rather similar. They both screw people for money, as Edward stated. He also discusses his tumultuous connection with his father, from whom he was estranged at the time of his death because he needed some alone time. Edward leaves Vivian, but not before checking on her. Vivian follows him and notices him playing the piano flawlessly. Vivian was watching him from behind. Edward pauses his performance and orders the people gathered around him to leave. Vivian is astounded by his command. She then closes in on him and takes off her robe. The two then make an affair. When Edward convinces Vivian to go shopping again the next morning, he observes that she isn't overjoyed about it. Vivian then informs him about her encounter with the nasty saleswoman. As a result, Edward chooses to accompany her this time. He brings her to several stores and instructs everyone to treat Vivian with the highest respect while she is with him. Edward then departs for work, leaving Vivian to shop till she drops and converts herself into an exquisite, lovely woman. Vivian visits the store where the nasty saleswomen are taken aback by her new and elegant appearance. Meanwhile, when Edward returns to the hotel, he begins to feel awful about the nature of his job. Vivian greets him while wearing the tie she purchased for him. He couldn't stand her attractiveness. Edward leans on her, and the two of them end up in the bathtub. Edward speaks up about his background, bringing them closer together. The two go to a horse race the next day, and all the ladies there are envious of Edward's new girlfriend. The lustful men make numerous filthy remarks about her, but Vivian does her hardest to remain calm and enjoy the race. Philip, Edward's lawyer friend, notices Edward's changing conduct and confronts him. He quickly deduces that Vivian is a corporate spy working for Edward's adversaries. Edward then describes how he met Vivian and learns about her true identity. After that, Philip approaches Vivian and asks her out for the night. She reluctantly agrees. Feeling upset and uneasy, Vivian has 3 days left with Edward, but she goes to the hotel and confronts him for revealing her identity to Philip. Edward makes the mistake of reminding Vivian of her true occupation, and she is deeply offended. When she sees the undisturbed money on the table, she exits the room, refusing to receive Edward's money, pursues Vivian and apologizes, saying that he was jealous of Vivian's conversation with David. Vivian sees Edward's sincerity in his apologies and follows him back to the room. The following day, Edward confronts Philip and puts him in his place. When he brings up Vivian later, Edward is taken aback by her stunning appearance in a stunning red gown. He offers her a stunning ruby necklace worth $150,000 to wear, claims he borrowed the money. Then Edward takes Vivian on a private jet and tells her it's a surprise. When they arrive in San Francisco, Edward brings Vivian to the San Francisco Opera to see La Traviata. Vivian is ecstatic at the opera as she watches the story of a prostitute worker who falls in love with a wealthy man. The next day, Vivian takes Edward on a date of her choosing. They spend the day eating corn dogs and having romantic picnics in the park. Vivian returns to her hotel room and sees Edward asleep. She realizes she is falling in love with him. She can't stop herself from kissing him. He wakes up smiling, and they enjoy each other's hug once more. While having an affair with Edward, Vivian violates the no-kissing rule. Later, as they lay in bed, they fell asleep. Confesses her feelings for Edward. Despite the fact that she believes he is sleeping, Edward was not prepared to hear this and did not respond. On Vivian's last day with Edward, unable to acknowledge his actual love, he promises to help her get off the streets and considers putting her up in a luxury condo and providing her an allowance. Promising to see her regularly, is angered by the offer because Edward continues to treat her like a hooker, and it reminds her of a childhood fantasy of being rescued from her abusive home by a knight on a white steed. When Edward receives a call from work, he leaves Vivian distraught since Edward does not feel the same way for her. His encounter with Vivian had an impact on him. Instead of wrecking his client's firm and profiting from it, Edward chooses to work with him to save it. Vivian has clearly influenced him for the better. Philip is furious at Edward's conduct and decides to track him down and confront him at his home. When he checks into his hotel room, he discovers Vivian there. He walks into the room, convinced that Vivian is simply another hooker, and begins insulting her. Philip is now attempting to impose himself on her. She attempts to push him away, but he slaps her so hard that she falls off the sofa. Fortunately, Edward in time to save her and gives Philip precisely what he deserves before evicting him. Edward is saddened by what happened to Vivian and does everything he can to console her and make her feel. He inquires as to what she desires. Well, she knows he can't be the man she wants. Edward's business is now complete. Vivian packs her belongings and prepares to go with her $3,000. Edward invites Vivian to spend one more night with him, but only if she wants to, not because he will pay. She politely declines and departs. This rips Edward's heart, and they say goodbyes. Back at her apartment, Vivian informed that she is leaving for San Francisco to start a new life and seek an education. Meanwhile, Edward rethinks his life and has the chauffeur detour to Vivian's apartment complex while driving him to the airport. Edward finally admits his affection for her and sets out to find Vivian. When he arrives at his destination, he climbs the outer stairs with a bouquet of roses, exactly like the Prince Charming she has always fantasized of. After that, they lived happily ever after. This is how our movie ends. Leave us a comment on how you found this movie recap. See you in the next movie recap. We hope that you enjoy your time and have a good day.